Hello and welcome live from New Delhi. You're watching DD India News Hour, India's voice to the world. I'm Gautam Roy, and coming up in the next hour. Sources say that the Indian Army has resumed patrols in eastern Ladakh's Demchok after the recent disengagement of Indian and Chinese soldiers at key friction points in the region. Slapping of sedition charges against Hindu leaders raises concerns in Bangladesh. Protest march held in Dhaka to demand better treatment of minorities. Japan and the European Union announced a defence pact. The EU's foreign policy chief calls it a historic and timely step. North Korea's Foreign Minister Cho Son-hui tells her Russian counterpart Sergei Lavrov in Moscow that Pyongyang will stand by Russia until victory in Ukraine. And Manchester United appoints Portugal's Ruben Amorim as its new head coach till June 2027 after the sacking of his predecessor Erik ten Hag. But India and China look like they are sticking to their deal to pull back their soldiers from positions of confrontation at the de facto border or the line of actual control in eastern Ladakh region, following an agreement to do so more than 4 years after friction between the two neighbours led to troops clashing fatally in the Galwan Valley. Sources say progress has been made now with the resumption of patrolling at one of the disputed points. Here's a report.
Images of bonhomie and exchange of Diwali sweets after over 4 years between Indian and Chinese troops at different points of the line of actual control on Thursday. These were followed closely by another positive development related to the ongoing disengagement process the next day. Sources said patrolling by Indian troops in Demchok in eastern Ladakh resumed on Friday. Patrolling at another friction point of Tepsang is expected to begin soon as well. India's Defence Minister Rajnath Singh, while visiting the state of Arunachal Pradesh on Diwali, had indicated that the disengagement process with China will soon be completed and it will also be taken forward.
एलएसी पर कुछ क्षेत्रों में कॉन्फ्लिक्ट्स को रिजॉल्व करने के लिए भारत और चीन के बीच डिप्लोमेटिक और मिलिट्री दोनों ही लेवल्स पर बातचीत हो रही थी। अभी हाल की बातचीत के बाद ग्राउंड सिचुएशन को रेस्टोर करने के लिए आपस में ब्रॉड कंसेंसस हुई है। इस सहमत के आधार पर डिसएंगेजमेंट का प्रोसेस लगभग यह पूरा हो गया है और हमारा प्रयास होगा कि बात डिसएंगेजमेंट से भी आगे बढ़े, लेकिन उसके लिए हमें भी प्रतीक्षा करनी होगी।
On the 21st of October, the two neighbors reached an agreement aimed at ending the eastern Ladakh standoff, which was followed by a meeting between Prime Minister Narendra Modi and China's President Xi Jinping on the sidelines of the BRICS summit in Russia, their first bilateral meeting in 5 years. The interim period had witnessed a ratcheting up of tensions between the two sides since May 2020 over certain disputed areas in eastern Ladakh, which peaked in June that year when soldiers clashed with each other in the Galwan Valley, leading to casualties on both sides. It triggered a long-running standoff in the rugged, cold desert area. Each side stationed tens of thousands of troops backed by artillery, tanks and fighter jets in close confrontation positions. With disengagement now nearing completion, the focus has to clearly remain on not only ensuring that it is adhered to by both sides, but also taken forward towards de-escalation and de-induction. Gautam Roy's report for DD India.
And let me now take you across to DD India's Akshay Dongre for more on this. Hi Akshay, how significant is this development of patrolling at one of the disputed points by Indian soldiers in the overall disengagement process?
Well, it's quite a start, Gautam. In fact, when the two leaders met in Kazan, we are talking about the Indian Prime Minister and the Chinese President. When they met in Kazan, it was in fact a breakthrough moment for the relation between the two countries. Now, as far as Demchok is concerned, it was a key friction point, and since patrolling has started, it signifies that the two countries have now started to implement measures on the ground to ensure that de-escalation happens not only at one point, but a de-escalation happens at all the friction points that are there on the borders between India and China, and that the relation between the two countries improve. This is one point that has held the growth of the relations between India and China, the world's two largest economies, the world's two fastest growing economies, to a standstill because of the fact that there were a lot of friction points as far as disagreements were concerned regarding patrolling, regarding territorial disputes that had risen out of the kind of tension that we saw in the Ladakh sector as well as other parts of the borders as well. But now this is a ray of hope. At best, we can look at it as a ray of hope as far as the whole Indo-Chinese relations are concerned when it comes to improving the ties between the two countries, and that is why the starting of patrolling is in fact a huge symbolism when it comes to the relation between the two countries. So yes, we are still waiting for the patrolling to begin at other friction points, especially when we talk about Depsang, but when we talk also about the overall relation between the two countries, as the Raksha Mantri or the Defense Minister has stated, we have to wait. There will be a timeline, and that a lot more has to be done to instill a sense of trust between the two countries that was severely damaged by what happened in Galwan.
Yes, Depsang also very, very critical because of the DBG link. But Akshay, the Defence Minister has also said that this unwinding of tensions will not just stop at disengagement, although some patience may be needed to see the follow-up steps unfold.
Absolutely.
Now, what kind of a tentative timeline could we be looking at for de-escalation as well as de-induction for them, with both two processes to take place?
Well, that's a very complicated question, when it comes to the ground situation, Gautam, because it has started when we talk about patrolling or the patrolling which also will lead to disengagement, de-induction, as you have also mentioned rightly. But we are looking at the leadership between the two countries, the Indian leadership and the Chinese leadership, actually making efforts on the ground. There were several rounds of commander-level talks that took place before this movement could be reached. So it took about 4 years of continuous talks between the leadership on the ground, between the military leaderships, and now we are seeing the result in Demchok and Depsang, hopefully soon enough. But there are a lot of friction points, not just on the ground or on the border areas, but when it comes to trade, when it comes to other issues of geopolitics, when it comes to concerns that India has had when it comes to the kind of activities that have been taking place in the Indian Ocean region by the Chinese Navy, and other points as well. So there is a list of things that have to be done for the relation between the two countries to improve, to come to better or friendly terms. But this is a good start, and from the efforts that have been made by the Indian leadership also, to ensure that the dialogue continues to go on, which Indian leadership has been, telling the world, be it the Russia-Ukraine war or the Israel-Hamas conflict, that solution of any conflict can be found only on the dialogue table, and India has actually exemplified that by continuously having discussions and dialogues with China, and now the result can be seen on the ground.
Well, let's hope that it's move forwards and smoothly and swiftly. Thanks a lot for joining us for the moment, Akshay Dongre. Now, as the US presidential election nears, Vice President Kamala Harris and former President Donald Trump remain neck and neck in the most recent polling. Trump and Harris are both gathering with supporters in Wisconsin, one of the pivotal swing states that could decide the election. The Democratic and Republican nominees are even holding rallies in the same city, Milwaukee. US singer and actress Jennifer Lopez also voiced support for Kamala Harris at a rally in Las Vegas. With more than 65 million people across the US having already cast their early ballots, it remains to be seen as who will eventually move into the White House. Here's a report.
As the voting day approaches in the United States, Kamala Harris and Donald Trump remain in neck-and-neck competition. Both Trump and Harris campaigned in the western part of the US and key swing states like Arizona and Nevada. Harris concluded her schedule with a performance by Jennifer Lopez in Las Vegas as she seeks to connect with Latino voters in the final days of the election.
Right now, we are on the brink of an election that demands a choice. A choice between backwards and forwards. A choice between the past and the future. A choice between divided and united.
US Vice President and Democratic presidential nominee Kamala Harris urged voters to turn the page on a decade of Donald Trump.
And we know we have an opportunity in this election to turn the page on a decade of Donald Trump trying to keep us divided and afraid of each other. We're done with that.
With immigration remained one of the contentious issues in the US presidential campaign, with many immigrants fearing a backlash if former President Donald Trump wins the poll. Trump used anti-immigration rhetoric to quote voters during a rally in Nevada on Thursday, saying November 5th would mark Liberation Day for the nation.
The United States is now an occupied country. Can you believe I have to say that? We're an occupied country. They're coming in, and they're by the thousands, and they have equipment that's military-grade equipment. How do they get that? They have military-grade equipment, but it will soon be an occupied country no longer. November 5th, 2024 will be Liberation Day in America. Liberation Day.
Vice President Kamala Harris, in stark contrast, advocates for a bipartisan approach focused on increased investments in border security and establishing legal pathways for eligible immigrants. Harris also criticized Trump for stalling a border security bill.
I do not believe in decriminalizing border crossings, and I've not done that as vice president. I will not do that as president. The first bill, practically within hours of taking the oath, was a bill to fix our immigration system.
In her election campaigns, Vice President Kamala Harris stated that former President Trump had tried unsuccessfully to repeal the Affordable Care Act, also known as Obamacare, during his presidency from 2017 to 2021. In response, Trump said he never wanted to get rid of the program. The latest polls by the economist YouGov and Tip Insights indicate that Harris has a slight lead of just 1 percentage point, with 44% of voters supporting her, while Trump is backed by 43%. 7 swing states, Pennsylvania, North Carolina, Georgia, Michigan, Arizona, Wisconsin and Nevada will decide the election this time. Swing states are states that can be won by either candidate in a presidential election. They are also called battleground states. These states are important because they can decide the outcome of the election. Presidential candidates focus a lot of time and energy on winning these states. About 240 million people are eligible to vote in the 2024 US election. Early voting has begun in states across the country where voters can cast their ballots in person or by mail. With inputs from Dheeraj Das, Abhishek Bose for DD India.
Let's now get you some live updates on the campaign trail with DD India's Shubhendu Ghosh joining us live from Atlanta, Georgia. Hi there, Shubhendu. Just 4 days left now. Are both Donald Trump and Kamala Harris still sticking to making all efforts to bump up their numbers in the battleground states, or are they also trying to pay attention to states where their leads are not as comfortable as they would like them to be?
Hello, Gautam. Well, past few days we've seen the entire focus has been on the swing states or the battleground states. Kamala Harris and Donald Trump yesterday were canvassing through Arizona and Nevada, important battleground states. Today, the focus is going to be on Wisconsin I am here in Atlanta, Georgia, which is another key swing state in these US elections. We also saw them campaign here in a very intense fashion. The focus is now really on keeping the flock together. By that I mean the core supporter group. Both the leaders want to make sure that there is no split in that vote. Just for an example, in Georgia, which has a significant black American population, which traditionally would support the Democrats, there have been concerns if Donald Trump could, through his influence, through his rhetoric, chip away some of the black male voters towards himself. Similarly, it's a very strong traditional Republican base that Donald Trump has. But the kind of narrative that Kamala Harris has presented, especially over the issue of women's rights and the issue of abortion, the Republicans must be concerned if white women voters could in fact be interested in Kamala Harris's narrative and may in fact also support her, even though largely they support the Republican ideology. So in that sense, we see the battleground state really facing the heat of the election campaigning as we speak, and it is likely to continue till the big day, November 5th, election day in America.
All right. Now, Shubhendu, apart from all the other issues ranging from the economy to immigration to health, issues like the language of violence and distrust in the electoral process also keep cropping up during the campaigning. But contentious as they may be, are any of them capable of shifting the needle decisively at this late stage in a tighter than ever race?
It's a hugely important perspective, Gautam, that you've just highlighted. And we see that in the run-up to the big election day, the political discourse has become very sharp, very problematic terms have been used. So if a leader refers to a certain race and population, or the supporters refer to them as floating garbage, or another opposition leader gives it back and says that the supporters of a particular leader are equivalent to garbage. There are a couple of things that is happening with this sort of a political discourse and hateful rhetoric. One is that it contributes to polarization. We understand that it works like a strategic dog whistling to one's own supporters to really make sure that you divide your supporters and the opponents in clear numbers. That is one. And also these remarks about potential fraud, problems with the electioneering system. What it does, we see, is that it induces a certain nervousness in the electoral system. We've been reporting for the past few weeks that in the run-up to the big election day and the results, there is a nervousness in the system as to what kind of outcome, what kind of backlash could one witness, and if it would be a repeat of the previous presidential elections. The security has been heightened, not just of the candidates, but mind you, of the polling officials. Places where polling is taking place will take place on November 5th. Bulletproof glasses, drone surveillance, these are technologies that many here say were not considered for just ordinary polling officials, but now it is being done. It's being done because the environment is very charged up. Every leader wants to believe that it is either going to be their victory or an election fraud. So that kind of a trust deficit does percolate down into the system and make the whole process problematic.
Yes, certainly, especially if I have people like Donald Trump saying that leaders like Liz Cheney should face a firing squad just to know what facing guns feels like. It just adds a very, very disturbing color to the entire exercise. But I'll have to let you go at the moment, Shubhendu. Happy tracking the elections till Election Day, Super Tuesday. Thanks for joining us for the moment. Now, still to come on DD India News Hour. The Israeli government hopes 2025 state budget will allow the nation to emerge from ongoing war with accelerated economic growth. The death toll in the devastating flash floods in eastern Spain has climbed to 205. And 5 school children among 7 killed in a bomb blast in southwestern Pakistan.
Complex issues, hidden agendas, twists and turns, strategic games. We think all dots are linked. We just need to connect them. Join me every week as I connect the dots to unravel hidden designs in statecraft, mysteries, and decode issues that matter to you. Watch Connecting the Dots with me at these times on DD India.
Welcome back. You're watching DD India News Hour. I am Gautam Roy. Now, in Western Pakistan, a blast near a girls' school killed at least 7 people, including 5 students, and injured 23 others. Authorities report that an improvised explosive device was attached to a motorcycle near the school, targeting police officers guarding polio vaccinators. Prime Minister Shehbaz Sharif condemned the attack, which coincides with Pakistan's 3rd nationwide polio campaign launched this week amid rising cases of the disease. 3 months have passed when Bangladesh Prime Minister Sheikh Hasina was forced out, but instability and lawlessness still prevail in Bangladesh. People from minority communities live in a perpetual state of fear and insecurity. Violence and protests are continuing. The nation's garment industry is also facing deep crisis marked by mass factory closures and layoffs. The nation appears to be caught in a chaotic churn. Here's more in this report.
A torch procession was held in Dhaka by the Bangladesh United Minority Alliance to demand better treatment of minorities in the country following a sedition charge against 19 people from minority communities. They have been charged with sedition over hoisting of a saffron flag, exposing the selective targeting of minorities in Bangladesh. The case seems to be one of retribution, coming at a time when Hindu organizations held a large gathering in Chattogram seeking a law and tribunal for the protection of minorities. Thursday's rally came after the UN High Commissioner for Human Rights, Volker Turk, called on Wednesday for minority protection and a national process of truth and healing following protests that led to the ouster of former Prime Minister Sheikh Hasina in August. At a time when there has been widespread outrage over the attacks on minorities in Bangladesh, US presidential candidate Donald Trump has strongly condemned the violence, calling the country one that is in a total state of chaos. Meanwhile, an angry mob stormed Bangladesh's Jatiya Party's central office in Dhaka on Thursday and set the building ablaze. The party had a brief alliance with ousted Prime Minister Sheikh Hasina's Awami League in 2019, which might be the cause of this violence, although no one has claimed responsibility for this attack. Bangladeshi garment industry, a vital cog in the country's economy and an important supplier to global brands, is facing a deep crisis marked by mass factory closures and layoffs due to uncertainties and instability in the country. Bureau Report, DD India.
Israel's cabinet has approved a wartime budget package including tax hikes and spending cuts to fund a war now entering its 2nd year. Israeli Finance Minister Bezalel Smotrich emphasized that the 2025 budget focuses on securing the state and achieving victory while supporting Israel's economic resilience.
All of this is intended to support all war efforts until victory, as we have done this year, but with God's help, we will enable the state of Israel in the coming year to transition from war to accelerated economic growth. We are now taking the final steps to get on a good path as quickly as possible, and then to prove the welfare of citizens of Israel.
A large number of volunteers have stepped up to assist with cleanup and rescue efforts in eastern Spain, where the death toll from devastating flash floods has surpassed 205, marking the nation's worst flood-related disaster in modern history. Drone footage has captured harrowing scenes of cars piled up in the streets and neighborhoods submerged in sludge. Muddy rivers have destroyed roads and vital infrastructure, leaving thousands without power, water and essential supplies in the hardest hit areas.
Cars piled up like toys in the streets, homes swallowed, an entire neighborhood covered in sludge and debris. This drone footage captures aftermath of the deadly floods of Alfafa town in Spain. Muddy rivers have swept away everything in their path, including roads, houses, and vital infrastructure. The floods led to power and water outages, as well as shortages of basic goods, particularly in the hardest hit eastern region.
Horrible. Normally, the view here is great. This bridge was really nice. It was an ancient bridge with ruins, etc. And now there's nothing left. Nothing. We are without internet, without phone coverage. We have nothing. And I think it's going to last for a while, with the bridge down and the roads closed.
The death toll in eastern Spain has surpassed the 200 mark as rescue teams continue their search for missing individuals. Many believe this disaster could become Europe's worst storm-related incident in over 5 decades.
We confirm by the certified forces of the Guardia Civil that there are indeed 202 victims and that the triage to confirm whether people are missing or not. I remember the phone number that at all times from the beginning has been 9003 652. There have been thousands of calls.
Volunteers headed to the worst-hit areas in Valencia to assist with cleanup efforts following deadly floods that have submerged large portions of land after heavy rains.
I live in Leliana, just outside Valencia, and I came here with a lot of people to help clean up this mess.
Throughout the Valencia region, thousands of people were seen carrying bags or pushing shopping trolleys to stock up on essential supplies.
All this is destroyed. All the debris reached up to here. And look at the kitchen. If you focus on the kitchen, you will see.
My wife and I don't want to live here anymore. It's already a nightmare. As soon as a bit of rain comes down, we are already checking our phones. And you just can't. At the end, you lose everything. I'm sorry. It's just helplessness. It's impotence.
The tragedy is already Spain's worst flood-related disaster in modern history. In 2021, at least 185 people died in heavy flooding in Germany. Prior to that, 209 people died in Romania in 1970, and floods in Portugal in 1967 killed nearly 500 people. With Rabindra Chauhan, Amit Mukherjee for DD India.
North Korea has offered unwavering support to Russia until Victory Day amid military cooperation. US Secretary of State Antony Blinken has said around 8,000 North Korean troops are in Russia to back its war against Ukraine. Take a look.
Russian Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov has hailed very close ties between Moscow and Pyongyang. He met his North Korean counterpart, who is in Russia. The meeting comes amid accusations from the West that Russia is planning a military escalation in Ukraine, using thousands of North Korean troops said to be in Russia.
Very close ties have been established between the militaries and special services of the two countries. This will also make it possible to reach significant security targets for our citizens and yours.
North Korea's foreign minister said that the country will stand by Russia until its victory in Ukraine. The Democratic People's Republic of Korea has unwavering confidence that the Russian military and people who have risen with resolve in the just struggle to end the high-handedness and unilateral actions of the US and the West and establish a new international order will surely achieve victory under the wise leadership of Comrade President Putin. We affirm that we will always stand with our Russian comrades until the day of victory. The United States is expecting North Korean soldiers in Russia to deploy in combat against Ukrainian forces in coming days. Secretary of State Antony Blinken has said that about 8,000 North Korean troops have been deployed to Russia's western frontline, Kursk region, with a total of 10,000 troops in the country.
We now assess that there are some 10,000 North Korean soldiers in total in Russia. And the most recent information indicates that as many as 8,000 of those North Korean forces have been deployed to the Kursk region. We've not yet seen these troops deploy into combat against Ukrainian forces, but we would expect that to happen in the coming days. Russia has been training DPRK soldiers in artillery, UAVs, basic infantry operations, including trench clearing, indicating that they fully intend to use these forces in frontline operations.
On the other hand, North Korea and Russia conducted a joint exhibition of tech products in Pyongyang, showcasing gadgets on Friday. It demonstrated wide cooperation between Russia and North Korea since the two countries' leaders in June pledged a stronger partnership. Tensions escalated on Thursday after North Korea successfully test-fired a new intercontinental ballistic missile dubbed Hwasong-19. North Korea said the launch had the longest flight time compared to previous launches. Bureau Report, DD India.
And still to come on DD India News Hour. We'll be speaking to our expert guest as Indian troops begin patrolling Demchok in eastern Ladakh. An Indian Army contingent departs for the 15th edition of the India-US Joint Special Forces exercise Vajra Prahar. And Botswana votes out the ruling party after 58 years in power.
Who will be the next president of United States of America?
Will Donald Trump make a dramatic comeback, or will Kamala Harris become America's first woman president?
It's a tight race to the White House.
The knives are out and the battle lines sharply drawn.
He's becoming increasingly unstable and unhinged.
She's a threat to democracy because she shouldn't even be the candidate.
I'm Amritpal Singh.
I'm Shubhendu Ghosh.
We travel across the United States
to decode the issues at the heart of this polarized election.
Watch this space only on DD India.
Complex issues, hidden agendas, twists and turns, strategic games. We think all.
Welcome back. You're watching DD India News Hour. I'm Gautam Roy. And it's now time to take you back to our top story, where sources have said that Indian soldiers have resumed patrolling in Demchok, one of the two flashpoints between India and China on their de facto border, which had remained unresolved since the June 2020 Galwan Valley clash. Now, what does this mean in terms of mending ties between the two neighbouring Asian giants? Let's find that out with our expert guest, Lieutenant General Sanjay Kulkarni, retired, former Director General Infantry of the Indian Armed Forces and the Indian Army, in fact. General Kulkarni, welcome to the show. What can you tell us about what can one infer from the fact that patrolling on at least one of these two unresolved points has now begun? That's what the Indian side is saying in terms of sources who are speaking to the media.
See, a positive development, God. Absolutely positive development, because it reduces tension. And once the tension is reduced, automatically you will find that the trust will soon be earned between both the sides. And once the trust is earned, you'll find, slowly and steadily, the disengagement process will lead to de-escalation, then maybe it leads to de-induction. But this is a very, very positive step, because sometimes it so happens that there could be just a wrong, some mishap might occur if the troops are eyeball to eyeball contact. But with this kind of thing which has happened at Demchok and at Depsan is a very, very positive step. And it was much easier to be done in Demchok, because that's something, because it was all along the Chanding Nala, and things can always be sorted out. And as we have all seen, 21st kind of an arrangement takes place, and we all understand that agreement sort of a thing takes place between the two countries. But 23rd, the pullout starts. And by yesterday, on the occasion of Diwali, the sweets are exchanged. So how quick everything happens, that shows that if anything has to be done, and we actually want to do it, it can be done. And this is a very, very positive development, because we are neighbors, and as neighbors, we must ensure that we live in peace and tranquility, and there are no kind of tensions, no fist fights, no nothing like that. Adherence to the agreements that will subsequently follow by the commanders on the ground, what kind of patrolling will take place, whether it will be twice a month or whether it's a joint patrol, whether we'll be informing each other, what strength would it be, what weapons will be carried. All that, those nitty-gritties will be sorted out once the commanders on ground do it. But it's a very, very positive step. And I'm all for it because I was there. I know what it means if you go under the tension. And the tension can be bad because winters are setting in. The visibility is very, very poor, and sometimes you just can't see even you can just see about a meter also from where you are. So that kind of a bad visibility, sometimes a mishap can take place. But that is now, I think, thank God, it remains as something of the past, which will never and should never happen again. Because trust is something which takes a long time to be earned. And that once we earn that trust between the two armies, I think a lot of things will be good for both the countries.
And India and China have a history of joint patrolling as well in these or similar areas?
Yes. What happens at some places, there are buffer zones that have been created in the earlier one in patrol point 14, 15, 17 Alpha, Pangang, so buffer zones have been created. At some places where there were eyeball to eyeball, at pitched up tanks, both sides have disengaged, like at Depsang. At Demchok, at Charding Nala, there was a little bit of a issue where the tent was there. I'm sure they would have done that away. Because all these kind of joint patrols also, like at Demchok, I can understand. It's very easy because both the troops are very close, sighted to each other. And you can see it exactly, starting from anywhere. So
Depsang is a little wider.
Yeah, Depsang is a plateau. And since it's a plateau, you obstruct something, then you have those patrol point 10, 11, 12, 13, all those kind of patrol points that are there. But once they've disengaged and they've gone back, I think at least the patrol points can be avoided. And it's an understanding between the two sides on ground that how would they be coming, when would they be coming, would they be meeting each other, would they be joint patrolling, or would it be a day specific that yes, we will come on this day, we will come on that day, coordinated patrolling, and ensuring that both sides do not create anything on that area on which they patrol. So all these nitty-gritties get sorted out. I think most important is that to have trust between the two countries, and once that trust is earned, I think everything else will fall in place.
Okay.
And we see
You mentioned these 3 Ds that we tried to explain to our viewers in a graphic form as well. That was playing on the screen just a while back. But just tell us, how incrementally do they flow from one to the other, and yet do we have a complete agreement between the two sides, between India and China, that one will follow the other? First disengagement, then de-escalation, and then we will have the third step as well.
See, what happens, the first step, as you rightly said, is the disengagement. Because disengagement, then that takes place, first and foremost, is the tension gets reduced moment there is disengagement, because their eyeball to eyeball contact is not there, arrangements are there, whether for whatever it may be, a buffer zone or a disengagement. So the troops are not facing each other. That's the first step, and I think that's very, very important step. That leads to de-escalation. Obviously, when there is disengagement, and when you are not likely to confront each other, you're not likely to involve yourself, there are arrangements and agreements which will take place, nitty-gritty sorted out, then of course it leads to a de-escalation. And then finally, de-induction. The de-induction process, of course, may take time because the Chinese have constructed huge infrastructure, fantastic roads on the side, the G219 which has come up, the amount of military equipment that has come, and they've plonked it over there. So that all slowly and steadily, I think once the disengagement takes place, you will find that the de-induction would subsequently happen when the de-escalation takes place. But very important is the disengagement. That's the first step, because that leads to reduction of tension and virtually no tension. Trust earned, then subsequent is the de-escalation, which automatically follows the disengagement if you adhere to the terms of agreement. Very important is the terms of agreements must be adhered to by both sides, because we saw it earlier. 93 agreement was there, going on as far as 2013, the agreements got violated. But despite that, I would say at least one agreement stayed on, that we did not fire on each other. Despite the casualties on both sides, we did not fire on each other. So that means agreements and understandings can be adhered to, and that would then ultimately lead to de-induction, because the trust would have been earned by both the sides that yes, nobody is going to, there's no undercurrent. And
General Kulkarni, we've been seeing commentary that, as far as the Indian side is concerned, India is going to pursue, it's keen to pursue all these three Ds. But for the Chinese, it was just about disengagement, and then they want business as usual to be resumed. Do you think that there is actually a difference in perception as to what has been agreed between India and China here, and the approaches might be different, which may not lead to the kind of results that the Chinese are seeking in advancing overall ties with India?
See, the disengagement, once it is done, there will be verification on grounds, because it's very, very important the verification is done. If the verification is not done, then there will be vilification unnecessarily, which is totally avoidable. So the disengagement, which lead to verification, once it is verified, and then, of course, the de-escalation process starts, because then the agreements between the commanders on ground would be there. And generally, the commanders on ground will have decided that, okay, these are the patrolling points. We will go along this. If there are joint patrols, we'll be on our side of the patrol point. You'll be on the other side. Like the earlier times, used to have a banner drill. Banner drill implied that when you saw each other, we lifted a banner to say that, look, we are approaching each other, we are on our side, you get on to your side, and it was adhered to, and both sides would go on to their respective areas. So this kind of arrangements that are there, definitely, as I said, disengagement, verification leading to de-escalation, and ultimately, finally, once the trust is earned, will lead to de-induction. The de-induction may take a long time, as I see, whatever I've seen of things on ground. The de-induction will take a long time, but disengagement, verification, and the de-escalation is something which is very much there and is happening, as can be seen by the exchange of sweets on the occasion of Diwali, is an indication that things have eased. There is no tension. Hopefully, like they say, well begun is half done. The other half is the trust to be earned, and once all that is there, then the tango can start, and that is the de-induction.
Okay. One would also say that without de-induction, how can de-escalation happen? True de-escalation will happen only with de-induction, right?
Yes, absolutely. The de-induction is the last process, because first is the disengagement, which the process has already commenced on the 23rd. We can virtually say we have disengaged. If that thing can be said with certainty, we have disengaged, that would automatically lead to de-escalation, because the de-escalation itself is an indication that both sides have moved into their respective areas. The agreements have been done. They're not eyeball to eyeball contact. Now the patrolling part, because what we had always said that Depsang and Demchok, because the other issues were virtually got sorted out. Patrol point 14, Galwan, Hot Spring, Gogra, all those had got sorted out. Pengangso, with some buffer zones created. Now we go back to the patrolling part, and once the patrolling is there and the verification is there, if both the sides know exactly where they are, there is no fist fights, no mishaps likely to occur, no accidents likely to occur. And even if they do meet in bad weather, and the graziers can go back to the areas where they were grazing earlier, and even if supposing by mistake on bad weather day it happens, then there are border personal meetings that take place, things can be restored. Nothing. As I said, I have firmly believed, having been on the ground right from the days of my colonel and till I retired, trust is the most important thing. If that be there, everything else can fall in place. And that probably the process started, and we must now be able to ensure that the trust is earned and it is not to be betrayed.
And till that happens, till all these three Ds unfold, do you think that India should keep telling them that, we need to do this, and until we do this, we can't really go back to business as usual?
Yes, like the Prime Minister is very clear. He said it very nicely, and they put it very subtly, mutual respect and mutual trust and mutual sensitivities. Mutual trust, mutual sensitivities, and the mutual respect that is earned will lead to de-escalation. And the disengagement process has commenced, the de-escalation process, and then ultimately the de-induction will happen. So it's very important that mutual sensitivity, mutual respect, and equals, we must be able to deal with it. And once we deal with as equals, and the trust, as I said, most important, the biggest factor that has got really a casualty in the entire thing is trust, which surprises me as to why did they do what they did. Because the commanders would have changed on ground over the last 5 years, 4 years, so many changes of commanders at all levels they would have taken. The leadership is still there. And once you find that the leadership decides that it has to be done, it is being done. And that is the most important thing. I think the BRICS led to one thing, 21st, 23rd, 31st. Just see how quick and everything. What couldn't take place in the last 5 years and 4 years, and eyeball to eyeball, and so much of tension, and the relationship between the two countries going down south. But now suddenly you find everything, and it's very important. As I see, not because I'm an Indian and an army officer that I'm saying, China has to play a huge role because it was they who did it, what they did. And it is they who have to ensure they have to earn the trust. And that trust, I'm sure, they will make all the efforts to earn. And we are there together. If the trust is there, everything will fall in place.
Yes, and a very good way to do that would also be to address the issue of settling the border dispute as well, which has been lingering for more than 4 decades. But that's another kettle of fish, which I guess we'll talk about another day. Thank you so much for joining us for the moment, General Kulkarni. Japan and European Union announced a new security and defense partnership in Tokyo, which EU Foreign Policy Chief Joseph Borrell hailed as a historic and timely step. Borrell and his Japanese counterpart Takeshi Iwaya unveiled the pact to develop cooperation on joint military drills, the exchange of information related to the defense industry and space security, among other matters. He called it the first agreement of this nature the EU has made with an Asia-Pacific country, describing it as a historical and very timely.
I am extremely pleased to be here with Minister Iwaya to announce the conclusion of this security and defense partnership between the European Union and Japan. It is the first agreement of this nature that we conclude with the Indo-Pacific countries. And it's so important because we are fully aware that Indo-Pacific will be the theater where the history of mankind will be written in this century.
The Botswana Democratic Party, that's the BDP, has lost the national election in the country after 58 years in power. Umbrella for Democratic Change, that's the UDC coalition, passed the 31-seat threshold needed to secure a majority in parliament. Outgoing President Mongwisi Masisi conceded defeat and said that his government would begin handing over the reins of government in the next few days. The BDP was the second long-ruling party in Southern Africa to suffer a defeat at the polls this year after South Africa's African National Congress also lost its parliamentary majority following 30 years in power.
The evidence is overwhelming. We've lost this election massively, right? And we need to come to terms with it and make space and give opportunity to the newly elected leaders and respect them and support them so that they can succeed, because it's Botswana's success that's most important.
Now, Indian Army contingent has departed for the 15th edition of the India-US Joint Special Forces exercise Vajra Prahar. Scheduled from the 2nd to the 22nd of November at the Orchard Combat Training Center in Idaho, US, this exercise brings together 45 personnel each from India's Special Forces and the US Army's Green Berets. Training will focus on joint tactical drills, reconnaissance missions, unmanned aerial systems and special operations, helping both nations enhance joint operational capabilities in desert environments while fostering camaraderie and mutual understanding. And still to come on DD India News Hour. GST collections in October in India increased by 9% to 1.87 lakh INR. A day after Diwali, special annual Muhurat trading session at the Indian markets ends in the green. And Village Halloween Parade draws thousands to New York City for the 51st annual event.
Geopolitics and trade deals. Economic challenges amid development. Hard work and the path to prosperity. It's the economy always. Between walkers, money is what money does and says. Supply creates its own demand. Between the bulls pulls and bears tears. When supply chains globalization and India rises to the podium. We'll get you centered with the Economic Brief at 8 p.m. every Thursday on DD India.
Welcome back. You're watching DD India News Hour. I'm Gautam Roy. Let's now take a look at some of the stories making news around the world. In China, Typhoon Kongre brought torrential rain and strong gales to Shanghai on Friday, prompting authorities to issue weather alerts in the financial hub. All ferry services in the city were suspended and high-speed trains faced cancellations from Thursday in preemption of the storm. Kenya's new Deputy President, Kithure Kindiki, officially took office following a court ruling that lifted the stay on his inauguration. The High Court had delayed Kindiki's swearing in due to over 30 legal challenges from former Deputy President's camp, but judges emphasized the need to fill the role in line with Kenya's constitution. 8 people were killed on Friday when the roof of a railway station collapsed in the Serbian town of Novi Sad. Serbian Prime Minister Milos Vucevic offered condolences to the victims' families and said that those responsible for the collapse would be held accountable. Let's get you some business updates as well, where Indian equity indices ended the Muhurat trading session related to Diwali on a strong note, with the Nifty at 24,300. The Sensex was up 335 points at 79,724.12, and the Nifty was up 99 points at 24,304.30. About 2,904 shares advanced, 540 declined, and 72 remained unchanged. All sectoral indices ended in the green, with auto index rising 1%. The BSE mid-cap index was up 0.7% and small cap was up 1%. And there's more good news on the economic front, as India's gross goods and services tax, or GST collection, in October stood at 1.87 lakh INR, at 1.87 lakh crore INR, registering a yearly jump of 8.9%. According to India's Finance Ministry, in October 2023, the total GST collection stood at 1.72 lakh crore INR. The collections in CGST, SGST, IGST and cess increased year on year in October. So far in 2024, total GST collection has been higher at 9.4% at 12.74 lakh crore INR compared to 11.64 lakh crore INR mopped up in the corresponding period of 2023. October 2024 has recorded the second best GST mop-up. The highest ever collection was in April 2024 at more than 2.1 lakh crore INR. And Wall Street stocks have rebounded on Friday from tame tech earnings and investor jitters less than a week before a neck-and-neck US presidential election. Oil prices have gained following reports that Iran was planning a major retaliatory strike on Israel, reviving the market's geopolitical fears. The big tech delivered a mixed bag of earnings this week, with concerns over AI spending overshadowing better than expected results from Microsoft and Facebook parent Meta. Amazon's strong earnings mitigated Apple's weaker China sales, and investors weighed a sharp reduction in US jobs growth in October. Ghosts, skeletons, witches and cats took over downtown Manhattan for the 51st annual Village Halloween Parade on Thursday. This year's theme, Meow, brought out cat lovers in full costume, with organizers inviting cat ladies of every persuasion to flaunt their finest tails and whiskers. Thousands joined the festivities in a lively, peaceful event under tight security. That looked like a cool cat affair. Now, you're watching DD India News Hour. We're getting you sports as well. Well, Nepal fell to Bangladesh in the final match of the South Asian Football Federation Women's Championship held at Doordarshan Stadium in Kathmandu. Prime Minister KP Sharma Oli congratulated the Nepali women's football team for their runners-up finish, announcing a cash prize of 300,000 rupees, Nepali rupees, for each team member. He emphasized the government's commitment to supporting sports and athletes, adding that the prize, free from taxation, will be awarded soon after the Tihar festival. In cricket, Shubman Gill and Rishabh Pant were at the crease as India ended the opening day at 86 for 4, trailing New Zealand by 149 runs. India was solidly put at 78 for 1 at one stage, but they lost 3 wickets in 8 balls, including Virat Kohli, to hand over the advantage to New Zealand. Earlier, Ravindra Jadeja claimed his 14th 5-wicket haul in Test cricket as India made a remarkable comeback to bowl out New Zealand for 235 runs. With 4 wickets to his credit, Washington Sundar also helped the hosts' cause. Daryl Mitchell top scored for New Zealand with a terrific 82, while Will Young hit 71. In football, Manchester United have named Portuguese Ruben Amorim as head coach to replace Erik ten Hag, the Premier League club said on Friday. The 39-year-old coach won Primeira Liga titles in 2021 and 2024 with Sporting Lisbon, now has signed a deal until 2027 and will join the club on the 11th of this month. Manchester United is delighted to announce the appointment of Ruben Amorim as head coach of the men's first team, subject to work visa requirements, the club said on its website. Ruud van Nistelrooy will continue to take charge of the team until Amorim arrives at Old Trafford. United sacked Ten Hag on Monday after a 2-1 defeat by West Ham left them languishing 14th in the Premier League with just 3 wins from 9 matches. Real Madrid have announced to donate €1 million to help the victims of the deadly floods of Valencian region in Spain. The donation is part of a fundraising campaign launched by the Real Madrid Foundation and the Red Cross to provide support for those impacted by the storm. Meanwhile, Spanish Football Federation said all soccer matches scheduled to be played in the Valencian region this week have been postponed. Saturday's clash between Real Madrid and Valencia, as well as Villarreal versus Rayo Vallecano, are among the games postponed. Moreover, Valencia will not host the final MotoGP of the season. That's what organisers have announced on Friday, owing to the devastating flooding in the east of Spain. Now, India's Anish Sarar has become the youngest ever FIDE-rated chess player at the age of 3 years, 8 months and 19 days. Anish Sarar, born on the 26th of January 2021, became the youngest ever FIDE-rated player after competing in the West Bengal State Under-9 Open and West Bengal State Under-13 Open in October. Anish Sarar currently has a FIDE rating of 1555 in November 2024 list. Anish's name was not there initially in the 15 players list. However, one of the players became absent and the organisers decided to put Anish's name as a substitute. Anish Sarar surpassed Tejas Tiwari to achieve this feat, who became the youngest FIDE-rated player at the age of 5 in 2023. And that's all we have in this edition of DD India News Hour. But let us know your thoughts on the news of the day. And for those on the go, you can get all the latest news and updates from India and across the world on DD India's mobile app. It's available on both Android and iOS. You can scan the QR code on the screen and download the app right away. And we'll be back with more news as it breaks here on DD India. I'm Gautam Roy, and from all of us here in Delhi, thanks for watching DD India News Hour.